The Korean peninsula has been inhabited for thousands of years, with various kingdoms rising and falling throughout its history. The Three Kingdoms period saw the emergence of Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla, followed by the unified Silla Kingdom and later the Goryeo dynasty. The Joseon dynasty established Confucian principles and created the foundation of Korean culture that would influence the peninsula for centuries. Japanese colonial rule fundamentally altered Korean society. The Japanese implemented harsh policies of cultural suppression, forced labor, and resource extraction. During World War II, Korea became a strategic base for Japanese military operations. The colonial period created deep resentment among Koreans and fostered resistance movements, including communist groups that would later play crucial roles in North Korea's formation. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the Korean peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel. This temporary administrative division became permanent as Cold War tensions escalated. Soviet forces occupied the north while American forces controlled the south. Born Kim Song-ru in 1912, he had joined anti-Japanese guerrilla forces in Manchuria during the 1930s. In the Soviet-occupied north, Kim Il-sung emerged as the leader. Soviet authorities selected him to lead the provisional government, partly due to his guerrilla credentials and communist loyalty. The Soviet Union established a communist government structure while suppressing non-communist political movements. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea was officially proclaimed on September 9, 1948, with Kim Il-sung as its first premier. Land reforms redistributed property from landlords to peasants, and rapid industrialization began with Soviet assistance. The new government consolidated power by eliminating political opposition and establishing a centralized command economy. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea, beginning the Korean War. Kim Il-sung believed he could achieve quick victory and unify the peninsula under communist rule. Initially, North Korean forces advanced rapidly, capturing Seoul and pushing South Korean, and hastily deployed American forces to the Busan perimeter. The war's tide turned when UN forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, launched the successful Incheon landing in September 1950. UN forces pushed North Korean troops back across the 38th parallel and advanced toward the Chinese border. This prompted China to enter the war, sending hundreds of thousands of People's Volunteer Army troops to support North Korea. The conflict became a brutal stalemate, with massive casualties on all sides. The war devastated both Koreas, with North Korea suffering extensive bombing that destroyed most of its infrastructure and industrial capacity. An armistice was signed on July 27, 1953, but no formal peace treaty was ever concluded, leaving the two Koreas technically still at war. The Korean War's aftermath left North Korea in ruins, but it also provided Kim Il-sung with opportunities to consolidate power. He eliminated rivals and established the foundation of his personalized dictatorship. The government launched massive reconstruction efforts with assistance from the Soviet Union and China. During the 1950s and 1960s, North Korea experienced rapid economic growth. The government implemented ambitious industrialization plans, focusing on heavy industry and military production. Agricultural collectivization was completed, and the state assumed control over all aspects of the economy. This period saw the development of North Korea's distinctive political ideology, Jukki, which emphasized self-reliance and independence. Kim Il-sung gradually distanced North Korea from both Soviet and Chinese influence while maintaining diplomatic relations with both. He played the two communist powers against each other, securing aid from both while avoiding becoming a satellite state. The cult of personality around Kim Il-sung grew stronger. with elaborate propaganda campaigns portraying him as the eternal leader and father of the nation. The government established a comprehensive surveillance system and strictly controlled information flow. Citizens were classified into different social categories based on their perceived loyalty to the regime. The military was given priority in resource allocation, beginning North Korea's transformation into a militarized society. By the 1970s, Kim Il-sung had established complete control over North Korea. The government promoted Jukki ideology as the official state philosophy, emphasizing Korean self-reliance and independence from foreign influence. This period saw the construction of massive monuments and the development of an elaborate personality cult. Economic development continued through the 1970s, though growth began to slow. The government maintained its focus on heavy industry and military production while neglecting consumer goods and agriculture. International isolation increased as North Korea's human rights record drew criticism and its support for international terrorism became apparent. The 1980s brought economic stagnation and increased dependence on aid from the Soviet Union and China. Kim Il-sung began preparing for leadership succession, promoting his son Kim Jong-il within the party hierarchy. This hereditary succession was unprecedented in communist states and required careful political maneuvering. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 dealt a severe blow to North Korea's economy. The loss of Soviet aid and subsidized trade caused economic contraction. China remained North Korea's primary ally, but Beijing began implementing market reforms that contrasted sharply with North Korea's rigid command economy. North Korea's nuclear program began in the 1960s with Soviet assistance for peaceful purposes. However, by the 1980s, intelligence agencies suspected military applications. The construction of the Yongbyon nuclear facility and North Korea's withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1993 created the first major nuclear crisis. Kim Il-sung's death in July 1994 during ongoing nuclear negotiations marked the end of an era. He had ruled North Korea for nearly 5 decades, transforming it from a war-torn territory into a nuclear-capable state with a unique form of socialism. Kim Jong-il officially assumed power after a 3-year mourning period, though he had been effectively controlling the country since the early 1990s. His leadership coincided with North Korea's worst economic crisis since the Korean War. The collapse of the Soviet Union and natural disasters in the mid-1990s created widespread famine. The arduous March period saw hundreds of thousands of deaths from starvation and disease. The government's inability to provide basic necessities led to the emergence of private markets and cross-border trade with China. The six-party talks involving North Korea, South Korea, China, Japan, Russia, and the United States began in 2003 but failed to achieve denuclearization. Despite the humanitarian crisis, Kim Jong-il maintained his grip on power through the military-first policy, which prioritized military spending over civilian needs. Despite international sanctions, the regime continued developing its nuclear and missile capabilities. The regime has developed intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of potentially reaching the United States, fundamentally altering the strategic balance in Northeast Asia. The nuclear program has become central to the regime's survival strategy and international bargaining position. Kim Jong-il's health declined significantly after a stroke in 2008, leading to preparations for another hereditary succession. Kim Jong-il's leadership style differed from his father's mass mobilization approach. Despite his youth and limited experience, he quickly consolidated power by eliminating potential rivals, including his uncle Jang Song-fek in 2013. His leadership has been marked by an acceleration of nuclear weapons development and a more aggressive foreign policy stance. He relied more heavily on the security apparatus and cultivated relationships with military leaders. The regime became increasingly dependent on China for economic survival while maintaining its nuclear program as a deterrent against regime change. The 2002 admission of a uranium enrichment program led to the second nuclear crisis and North Korea's withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. North Korea conducted its first nuclear test on October 9, 2006, joining the Nuclear Weapons Club. Kim Jong-un became North Korea's leader after his father's death in December 2011. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea has conducted multiple nuclear tests and dramatically improved its missile technology. Domestically, Kim Jong-un has implemented limited market-oriented reforms while maintaining strict political control. The regime has allowed some private enterprise and market mechanisms while ensuring the party's continued dominance. These reforms have led to modest economic improvement, though North Korea remains one of the world's poorest countries. The period from 2017 to 2019 saw dramatic diplomatic engagement, including summits with South Korean President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump. However, these diplomatic efforts failed to achieve meaningful denuclearization or sanctions relief, leading to renewed tensions. Kim Jong-un's leadership has also been characterized by a distinctive public persona and modernization efforts. Unlike his reclusive father, he has cultivated a more accessible image, appearing frequently in public and engaging with citizens. The regime has promoted technological advancement and infrastructure development, constructing ski resorts, water parks, and high-rise apartments in Pyongyang to project an image of prosperity and modernity. The COVID-19 pandemic presented unprecedented challenges for North Korea. The regime implemented some of the world's strictest border controls, virtually sealing the country and severely limiting trade with China. This isolation exacerbated existing economic difficulties and highlighted the regime's vulnerability to external shocks. The pandemic also accelerated the development of domestic industries and self-reliance policies, though at considerable economic cost. Recent years have seen continued weapons development, including hypersonic missiles and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Kim Jong-un has declared North Korea an irreversible nuclear state and enshrined nuclear weapon status in the country's constitution. This represents a fundamental shift from previous nuclear policies that maintained the possibility of negotiated denuclearization. And Russia, antagonistic relationships with South Korea, Japan, and the United States, and general isolation from the global community. North Korea's international relations have been shaped by its alliance with China. China remains North Korea's primary economic lifeline, providing energy, food, and trade opportunities despite international sanctions. The regime has consistently used provocative actions to gain international attention and extract concessions. This pattern of escalation followed by negotiation has characterized North Korea's foreign policy for decades. The nuclear program serves multiple purposes, deterring regime change, providing bargaining leverage, and maintaining domestic legitimacy. North Korea's economy has evolved from post-war reconstruction success to long-term stagnation and crisis. The command economy model that initially produced rapid industrialization became increasingly inefficient and unable to adapt to changing global conditions. The loss of Soviet support in the 1990s exposed the economy's fundamental weaknesses. Despite official adherence to socialist principles, market mechanisms have gradually expanded. Private markets have become essential for survival, and unofficial trade with China has flourished. The regime has grudgingly accepted these market activities while maintaining state control over key sectors. North Korea has developed one of the world's most comprehensive systems of social control. The regime uses extensive surveillance, restricted movement, controlled information, and harsh punishment to maintain power. Citizens are classified into different social categories that determine their access to education, employment, and residence. The human rights situation remains severe, with political prison camps holding an estimated 80,000 to 120,000 prisoners. The regime restricts freedom of expression, assembly, and movement while maintaining strict control over information. Defections to South Korea have provided insights into the regime's control mechanisms and human rights abuses. North Korea's history reflects the intersection of Korean nationalism, communist ideology, Cold War dynamics, and authoritarian rule. From its origins as a Soviet-backed state to its current status as a nuclear-armed nation, North Korea has defied predictions of collapse while maintaining its unique political system. The country's future remains uncertain, facing challenges from economic underdevelopment, international isolation, and an aging leadership system. Whether North Korea can adapt to changing global conditions while maintaining its current political structure remains one of the most important questions in contemporary international relations. The Kim family's 7-decade rule has created a system that prioritizes regime survival above all else. This has resulted in a heavily militarized society with nuclear weapons capabilities, but also widespread poverty and human rights abuses. Understanding North Korea's history is essential for addressing the ongoing challenges it poses to regional stability and international security. The story of North Korea demonstrates how historical circumstances, leadership decisions, and international dynamics can create and sustain seemingly anachronistic political systems. As the world continues to grapple with the North Korean challenge, the lessons of its complex history remain relevant for policymakers and observers seeking to understand this enigmatic nation.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.